Hi, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Fix. I'm your host, Derrick Mains. Today, I have an old friend with me. Not just that he's old, but we've actually been
Which he is,
friends.
which he
Yeah,
is, by the way.
which he is, but we've actually been friends for a very long time. I've got Paul Sim here. Paul, good to see you. I mean, how did we meet? It's had to be 20 years, like close to 20 years ago.
Oh, it's a while ago. So we met when we were ramping up solar pool technologies, and we were part of the Green Chamber,
That's right. I was
and
on the board.
and you were part of the Green Chamber at the same
Yeah.
time with, I think, Renature,
Okay.
and so that's how we met. And eventually, you ended up doing some work for us on a
Yep.
consulting basis, helped
Yep.
us ramp up a customer service system there, and we've just found opportunities to work together ever since because turns out I guess we like each other.
Yeah, we like each other. That's always, and we socialize, take the wives out to dinner. So it's become such a great relationship over the years. Paul, tell me a little bit about your history because you've been in manufacturing. You've had a robotics company, robotic pool skimmers. You've now exited that business. Now you're on to consulting again, and it's been fun watching that transition because I have to admit, I think you don't realize how refined your thinking gets when you're CEO of a company because all you think about is just that one vision. And then it's like
Right.
once you sell that and your brain sort of opens up, it's been really cool because like we've gotten all these philosophical conversations and things that we used to always talk business. And now all of a sudden it's like, hey, now I'm free to talk about things that aren't absolutely related to what happens on Monday morning. So tell us a little
Yeah.
about that
So
history.
so Derek, I've been running businesses for myself or for other people for approaching 30 years now, which means I started when I was like 15, right? So,
Yeah.
uh, but and it's been through a range of things. The very first startup I was involved in was actually a computer software startup. And to give you an idea of how long ago that was, we wrote programs in BASIC, and we were using DOS prompts to run our computers. So that was a while ago.
Yeah, a while
Um,
ago, like what sounds like some of the shipping software that I saw just Tuesday this week.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
inventory. There's still some out there, but yeah,
So I've been through the technology side. That I got involved in farm and construction equipment. I started life as a farmer, so I have some background in that heavy equipment area, and then transitioned from there into fire trucks. And most of my career up to that point in time was involved in the sales side, so revenue generation. When I got into the fire truck business, emergency vehicle business, I ended up running a plant for a company. I ran the Canadian operation for them. And it was really my first experience in operations.
Mm.
And that's where I really started to, I didn't know I was learning this at the time,
Yeah.
but I started to learn some of the principles that you teach in the system, which was if you really want to go learn what's going on in your business, you got to get within 50 feet of the people
Yeah.
that are doing the work, right?
Yeah.
And so the great thing about, a sales guy going into this operations job is I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Right?
Right.
So the first thing I did was I went out and to the shop floor. We were struggling. We were losing money. It was kind of a basket case. And I think the reason they gave me the job is that they figured I'd fail and it would give them excuse to
Give you a
shut the
chance to get
plant
rid of you.
down. And so anyhow, I went out to the shop floor, started to talk to all the supervisors in all the different departments we had. Said, "How do we make this better? I don't really know that much about manufacturing, but
Yeah.
you guys do it every day. What do you think we could do to make this better?" And it was like light bulbs went on all over the place, right? And
Yeah.
and a lot of these guys had never been asked that question before.
No.
And so the ideas that started flowing out of this were just like unbelievable, you know.
Yeah.
And so then we had to create a process. Okay, how do we consolidate all this and figure out how to start managing all of this information and data that's coming out from the supervisors, and then we start to expand that out into some of the lead hands, and we just started doing stuff. We just started. Hey, let's try this. Hey, this plant's probably going to be shut down anyhow. So let's just let's just give this a try. And we started trying, and we started changing stuff, and we started working together. And all of a sudden, the team started communicating with each other. And all of a sudden, I was a hero because we turned the plant around, and all I did was ask people how we could fix it. and
Instead of
had
you
the
telling
courage
them
to
what to do,
implement.
they just told you what to do.
That's right.
I mean,
Yeah,
that was my
and
first
just had the
turnaround.
courage
Yeah.
to implement their ideas, basically.
It was
And
my first
so
turnaround experience as well. Is I had no clue. I had been given a deadline. They said the business will close in 6 months. Like the lease is done. When the lease is done, we're liquidating. And I was like, and I got promoted. Like the manager quit when he heard that, and they were like, "Anybody want to be the manager and for the 6 months and do the reports?" And they just thought I would sit on my ass and collect a little bit more cash. And instead, I just went to everybody and said, "Hey, we all know what's wrong. We want to just fix it." And
yeah,
number one location 4 months later, and everybody was like, "What just happened?" And they're like, "Wow, where did you go to school for this?" I'm like, "No, you just go down and ask people how to make it better, and they just tell you, and then you just do those things."
yeah,
It's not real hard. I think that's why Scott Winter, mutual friend of ours, likes to call it lead-duship. It's like, it's not
yeah.
leadership you're teaching. It's just like, duh. Like, why don't you just do this stuff, you dummy? So
Yeah, and it's really about listening and understanding and having some courage to take some risk as well. Talk about that. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I'm not sure I'd recommend to people generations down from me, but we decided we had to do a plant overhaul. We had to change the way that the work was flowing through the plant. And we had to make some physical changes. We had to knock out some walls,
yeah,
change the location of some of the cells, and all that sort of thing. And we decided we just to get more throughput and to deal with issues in the plant, we needed to do that. And it wasn't a huge investment. It was like a $200,000, $250,000 investment to do this. But we were owned by this company in Florida, which in turn was owned by a company in Chicago. And so I wrote up or we collectively, the management team, wrote up this request for funding. And God, I kept following up, trying to get it approved, and we already had stuff lined up to do
yeah,
this work,
do this
right?
work. Yeah,
And we had a whole plan laid out. We're going to shut down over Christmas. Some of the people are going to stay. We're
yeah,
going to do this work over Christmas. We're going to take an extra week off after New Year's, and then we're going to reopen and we're going to rock and roll.
yeah.
Suddenly, I got cement trucks rolling in, and I get this call from the chief financial officer of the company in Chicago, and he says, "Paul, I'm reviewing this request for funding that's on my desk for this plant changeover." And I said, "Oh," said, "How important do you think this is to getting it done?" And I said, "Well, it's pretty important." And he said, "How pregnant are we on this?" And I said, "Well, if I hold my phone up to the window, you'll hear cement trucks rolling in." And
Yeah,
so fortunately, he got on board and he signed off, and the CEO signed off, but it did. It made a big change. But sometimes you have to be willing to push things a little bit. And so that
yeah.
was my first experience of saying, I'm not sure I'm cut out for the corporate world. So it
Yeah,
wasn't
no, and I had
after
very
that.
similar experiences of, it's like, hey, well, look, we need $10,000 to make this investment that will generate an extra $500,000 in capacity in the system. And then they just wring their hand, oh, 10,000, could we get it to 8? I'm like, what? I sold a deal a couple of years ago. It was really cool. I did discovery. I got paid discovery to do it for this call center. And at the end came out and said, look, here is the savings. Like here's the existing process map. Here's the process map where we want to move to. Here's the savings. And it was a smaller business, $488,000 a year, $488,000 a year in additional profit. That's the number. It's exactly what's going to happen. And then I showed the investment and said, and before I showed the number though, I said, well, it'll only take 4 months to pay it back. 4 months of your savings, you're going to get the 400,000. We're just going to temporarily take 4 months of those savings. We need to invest that so that we can do this. But I didn't start with the price. I
Right,
ended with
right. Yeah,
and that was a lesson that I had to learn, is selling this ROI to CEOs to be able to say, hey, look, I have one right now. And, I just went there this week and was doing a little discovery and I had to ask the question and walking around. I'm like, what is off limits here? And what do you really want to do? And he's like, well, if you tell me that every piece of equipment in this building has to move out to make it better and to hit this goal, every piece of equipment in this building will leave. And I'm like, that's what I want to hear, because I might not suggest that any of the equipment leaves. but I need
Right.
to understand the parameters of which you're able to think about the efficiency that we're going to bring here.
Right.
I like to use this the example of Kodak. Kodak was this billion-dollar company with tens of thousands of employees. Instagram with 17 people in a one room conference room that was all shared was valued at a higher number than Kodak ever was, right? So there's
Right.
different ways of skinning the cat. You just have to think about it and understand what the hard and fast rules are, and then be able to play inside it.
And, I won't go into details, but as you know, I had a chance to, after we left the corporate life, I bought and grew and sold a business. And then we did the startup with Solar Pool Technologies, which was what I thought was going to be a $500,000 investment in a 5-year project that turned into $1 million investment in a 12-year project.
That sounds about
But,
right. I mean, no,
but anyhow, and that was the business we exited last summer.
yeah.
And it's like you said, it's been really interesting to kind of step back since I'm no longer running businesses, and to think about, hey, what did I learn? Over this 30 years of
Yeah.
running organizations and managing people. What did I learn? I think when you look back, I learned way more from the stuff that went wrong than
Always.
and than the stuff that went right. Because all you do in the stuff that went right, I guess I was right, and you
Yeah.
pat yourself on the back and away you go. But the stuff that really, especially the stuff that just went like totally off the rails,
Yeah.
it's like, man, those are huge learning experiences that you carry with you for your entire career. And sometimes not just, if you're running a business, you carry it with you in your
Oh, yeah.
pocketbook for a while
Yeah.
too. Until
Oh, yeah. And
it's a
listen,
good company.
trust me, I absolutely know that feeling. And then the real dumbass moment is when you've made that mistake once and you've learned from it. And then 2 years later, you go do the same thing again. It's like, there is nobody else responsible but me.
Why
I
is my ego
decided,
so big? Why
and
is my ego so big that I did this again?
no, and that is the best part about it, is being able to go back to yourself and say, or, you've got a very brilliant wife as well. Or many times it's when it does all fall apart and I say, I should have really thought about this. And she goes, do you not recall the car ride to Flagstaff that weekend where I
Or
told
yeah,
you? Oh, yeah.
or you could ask me.
Yeah,
Right?
it's so
Yeah,
true. I mean,
yeah. There's more than one occasion I'm sure Karen is shaking her head and saying, "God, I wish Paul had
I wish this
had
guy's
asked me
brain was
before he
not.
made that stupid."
I wish the skull was slightly thinner, like the things would get through.
Yeah.
But it is
But
really true. And I think learning from those lessons and applying that back into business. Listen,
yeah,
my whole system is all the mistakes I made throughout the years.
yeah.
Like, it's
Well,
not,
and
I don't
and
map the
so it's
successes,
really,
I'm mapping the failures. Yeah.
yeah, it's really interesting. So I boiled down success into 3 questions that I think every CEO should be asking themselves every day.
Yeah.
So the first question, and they're kind of long questions. I mean, there's more stuff, but the first question is, what's your revenue science? What's your revenue system? And so, is my brand promise, my strategy, and my mission, are they all working together to communicate the value we deliver to our customers in a way that allows us to retain existing customers and build new customers so we can grow, right? So there's a lot there, but you got to have clarity around that mission, the brand promise, those things. But the interesting thing is, a lot of people don't appreciate the fact that your revenue system, in the end, is going to be built on process, right?
Oh,
It's
100%.
going to be built on your ideas around the system, because you got to get the value concept and the mission and brand promise right. But once you've done that, how am I generating leads? How am I converting those leads to sales? How am I onboarding those those are all processes. Those
Oh,
are all things that you need to map out. That you need to do exactly what you're talking about with your system.
yeah. Well, in marketing, they call it a funnel, right? The funnel is the new
Right.
thing. All it is just a process map to understand where things fall out and
Right.
how you move things through and how quickly you move them through. Come on, this isn't new ideas. There's no new ideas under the sun. These are all old ideas that just have been lost. People aren't thinking about it that way.
And
So,
if you're an early stage company, you may never get out of that. That may be
oh yeah,
all you do, you
yeah.
know? That because without revenue, you got nothing. But then as you grow, then that's when you get into the next question, which is, you know, are our processes, people, and technology working together to deliver that value to customers, profitably for one, in a timely manner, and in a way that exceeds our brand promise. So,
Mhm.
are you exceeding your customers' expectations? Are you doing it in a timely manner? And are you doing it profitably? Now, once again, there's a lot to unpack out of
Ooh,
that question, but that's your internal operating system. That's once again mapping processes,
yeah.
overlaying your information flows, doing all the things to 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 make sure that your people know what they're supposed to do when they're supposed to be doing it, and have the tools and capability to be able to do
That's the system science piece, right? Of
it. Right,
your methodology, revenue science, system science, guidance science, right?
right, right. And so that's what people might refer to as operations. Your operations system. How are you delivering the value
Yeah.
once you get an order in the system? And then the guidance science is how are my measurement and leadership components of my business working together to make sure that we stay on track, right? To make sure that we're headed towards our vision, we're staying on track. And really it's what are you measuring? How do whether that's the right thing to measure?
Yeah.
And what are you doing from a leadership perspective to make sure that all of those are coordinated and working together. So really, it's only three questions. I mean,
Yeah.
they're each kind of big, right? But
Yeah, each
but
one takes a month to
sometimes we
answer,
try to
but
make
yeah.
this too complicated. Right?
Yeah, no, I really like that. One of the things that I noticed though about this is that one of the pieces that's not there, and I'm gonna give you a little commentary on why I don't think it's as important right now as maybe it was years ago, is the sort of human piece. Last episode I was just recorded a little bit ago, we were talking about this idea of is there even a need for human relations anymore inside businesses, or is it really systems relations? Because now what's happening, particularly in Silicon Valley, is people are working their job and they work with 3 full-time 24/7 AI agents that also do work, that also could get us job assignments, that attend meetings, that are getting work, and they're going and doing these things. They're not humans, but they are part of the system, right? So I'm sort of the belief right now that HR, let's be honest, we originally called it personnel, and then it was what was it before? It was before it was it was human resources. Then it became human relations, and now I think it's about ready to drop the human. And it's really the relationships of the organization, system and people relationships in there. So that changes a lot of things because all of a sudden culture is different if you have 40 people and 5,000 AI agents than if you have 5,000 people. Right? Culture is a totally different thing, and it might mean some very different things. It might formulate differently. It might not be as important. I mean, I know that's a weird thing to say, but maybe culture isn't as important anymore in an environment where most of the people who work for you aren't actually people. Like, do
Right.
you really need to go get a drink with all of your AI agents so that you can bond? Do we really need to go and do bonding activities and workshops for team build?
Yeah.
We don't need those things anymore.
I think it's going to be an interesting evolution. When I first started in business, you had secretarial pools with IBM Selectric typewriters that were typing memos and hand
Yep.
distributing them around. And the advent of personal computers and word processors eliminated all that. And then you had the internet, which eliminated a whole bunch of different jobs. But it's interesting when you look at it. Employment continued to grow all through all of
Every
these.
one of those, yeah. It shifted,
So
but
it's shifted.
yeah.
So I think it's going to be interesting to see with the advent of AI, what are the new roles of humans within the construct of an AI environment or a company that's built around AI. You know,
Yeah.
as an example, with GapView, my partner John Cloyne and we're having the discussion and say, we're early stages with this. We need to build AI into our organization from day one, as opposed to consulting firms that have been
Yeah.
out there for forever,
Yeah.
and they got to say, well, how are we going to integrate AI? We can build it from the start here, and we're pretty excited about that. But I don't think that means we don't have humans involved
No.
as we grow as well.
Yeah.
I think
Sure.
it's what the role of those humans in an organization is, I think, going to become even more important to some extent,
Sure.
because you still have to prompt the AI, you still have to evaluate the information in a way that is consistent with what your brand promise and what your
Yeah.
value is as well. So I think there's always going to be a role. I think it's going to change and it's going to evolve, just like it has with every other technology revolution we've had in the last 40 years.
And when it comes to AI, I think where the biggest thing that it fails at doing is AI is really good at pastiche blending, taking all sorts of ideas and blending them together. So you can say, I want a modern painting, but in the style of Picasso. Well, I can look up what a modern painting is and it's Picasso, and it can blend those things together. But what it can't do is connect things that aren't naturally connected. And if we're really honest, that's where most innovation comes from. It comes
Absolutely
from
right.
making obscure connections, solving problems that don't seem like problems at the time. I mean, I can imagine the founder of Uber and Lyft, standing on a street corner trying to hail a cab in the rain and going, I'm trying to protect my phone from the rain. Well, what if my phone was the answer to getting the car? Why am I standing out here? Why isn't my phone standing out on the corner? And that
Right.
revolutionized an entire industry. Or, could you imagine Airbnb, starting that up and saying, we're going to be the biggest hotel brand in the world. We just won't own any properties at all.
Yeah.
What? We're the biggest lodging company in the world with no properties. We're the biggest car company in the world, or transportation company with no vehicles. So those things are really hard for AI to do. It does not see inside the blind spots. And it also, because it has access to everything, it weights things equally. You have multitudes of different experiences. And because of that, you weight certain things differently, which means you produce a unique and different result. And you many times will blend things. And I'm just saying, generally, the human brain does this kind of stuff as we see patterns and we make connections where they aren't there. And then sometimes that turns into something. AI can't do that. So,
Right.
For my nieces and nephew, what I have told them is learn how to think. Go to school, take a
Right.
class in physics, take a class in biology, buy a microscope, like just learn different ways of seeing the world and thinking, because that's the skill that everybody's going to be desperately looking for. And everybody's going to be testing to try to find it. And nobody's going to have it. And
Right.
that creative genius of, just let it sort of flow.
My theory is that AI, at least in its present state, and AI is evolving, and we may not even imagine what it looks like 5, 10 years from now. But at the present time, AI, in my view, has a tendency to drive everything towards the average, right?
Yeah.
Because if you and I deliver the same prompt into the same AI model, we're going to get the same answer, and we're going to take the same actions as a result of that. Now, we may feed it into a different AI model. We may get a slightly different, but these AI models are all being trained on the same information. So it tends to want to drive everyone towards the average. So the question is, how do you find the exceptional within the construct of a system that's growing throughout the world, that is tending to want to drive everyone towards the average? Yeah. And I think the people that can figure out the answer to that question are going to be the next generation of billionaires. How do we use AI, combine that with human thought, to create stuff that's exceptional, that's different from what the AI model is going to create for me?
I love that. All right. So tell me a little bit about the system. So you've gone through training, you've learned, like you've been through training back when I was doing it with AMP and all sorts of different things. So what is it about the work that this has all sort of come to fruition now through what we now call the system, thanks to you, because you're the one where like, hey, you use all these words. Why don't you just call it one unique thing? And I'm like, well, I just wrote a book called The System. Maybe we should call it The System. Thank you for the naming convention there. But tell me a little bit about how you incorporated into the work that you do, because you don't do the same work as I do, but you do
Right.
incorporate a lot of this thinking into that work.
I listened to Lucas's
Yeah,
last week or the week before and he and I were both in your first
that's right.
cohort with
The
the
first
training.
cohort, like everybody that's still around and still doing this actively, all seems to come from that first cohort. So
Yeah,
that's really,
yeah.
I should
So
look at that data. Like, what was the deal with
yeah,
that first one, right? Where I had no
and
freaking clue and I was just explaining it from my gut. For some reason, that one seemed to stick really good.
yeah. Well, and I think it was that blend of people. Dan was in that as well.
Yeah,
Dan Sloan. And,
yeah, right.
so what it was for me, because I was just coming off of selling a business, right,
Yeah,
and going through this process
yeah,
of I don't really want to. I don't really want to run another business at
yeah,
this
yeah,
stage.
yeah, yeah. I
But
don't
I
want to
would
do that
really
again.
like to help people out, and I'd like to find a way that I can combine the knowledge and expertise and maybe wisdom that I have with some methodology that I can, deliver to people and make a meaningful change
Yeah,
in their business or help them make a meaningful change in their business. And so what I found going through that is it was like an aha moment and say, wow, I wish I had had this when I was running my own businesses. It's not that we didn't do process. We did lots of that and we kind of went through
yeah,
it, but the whole action results mapping you use, the identifying pain points and constraints in the process we go through using your system to surface stuff that's really important that needs to get done right away.
mm,
It was like, wow. When I took over that plant I talked to you about,
yeah,
if I had that methodology to use back then, we would have moved it along, even
yeah.
faster and further than we did. And so it was kind of an aha moment and said, wow, I can take what I know and have learned over the use this methodology and really help people.
So the one question that I ask of everybody on this podcast since I started coming back and doing it again is, Paul, why do you think I like hanging out and working with you?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is we have fun together. I
We
mean,
do- Yeah,
you
that
never
is
hang
true.
out with people you don't
We
have fun
always,
with,
yeah,
right?
we always are
So we
laughing our
always,
asses off about something,
yeah,
right?
we always
I
find
still
something
think
to,
I remember one
laugh
night
about.
at a party at my house. I think there was in Ahwatukee at the time, and I got this cheddar cheese popcorn, and there was a bowl of it sitting there. And I don't know what it was. We started BSing about something. 20 minutes later, we had eaten this entire we had popcorn everywhere on the floor
Yeah,
around us. We were just like, "This is really good popcorn," and I'm like, "That was just there's just so many fun
and
times." I agree with that. It's
and
good.
and I think we also have some common backgrounds in terms of entrepreneurs and music. Music, we both
I'm a
played
musician.
music when we were earlier in our career,
Yeah,
so we had a little craziness that way. But I also think one of the reasons you like me is that I'm not afraid to ask tough questions. And I like to think that I carry that over to relationships with the clients as well, because I know we've had and it goes both ways.
oh yeah,
We've had conversations where we've said to each other, look, Derrick, you need to ask yourself this question. you know,
yeah.
you need to think about what problem are you really trying to solve here? What issue are you? And so I think we challenge each other, and I think that really helps to build relationships.
Yeah, I think you're dead on, Paul. And all right, so we have to figure out how to talk for another like 20 seconds, so at least get you over the 30-minute mark, so you're in the realm with my Lucas conversation. I said we were going to do 15, 20, but we knew it was going to go. The hardest part with these is not going 3 hours, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
there were
exactly
some
right.
things I bit my tongue on where I was like, we could go someplace there. we could
Well, I'm
embark.
gonna I'm gonna throw out a suggestion for our next conversation if we
Okay.
have a chance.
Yeah.
Is we need to drill down into the statement that you and I both make, which is every business problem is a communication problem, and every communication problem is a process problem. So I think we should put that on our list for our next
That's
conversation if there
great.
is one on this
Yeah, I
podcast,
love
because
that.
there would be a lot of fun around that
I,
conversation.
I love it very much. Paul, how can people find you and hear more about what you do?
So go to thegapview.com, thegapview.com. And I would say ignore all the bullshit that's on our
Yeah.
landing page for the most part, and just go straight to down to there's a document that says enterprise health checkup.
Hmm.
And it's a simple little assessment that is going to help people think about what's the most important thing I should be working on today. And of all the things that are on that website, that's the most valuable thing.
That's the most fun.
I,
All right,
I'd
cool. I
encourage
love it.
people to do that.
Paul Sim, thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for tuning in to this edition of The Fix. We'll see you next time.